It started out as something small, almost imperceptible. At first, I thought it was just the old building settling, creaks in the walls, the occasional groan from the floorboards. It was an apartment in a relatively quiet part of town, but being in a place that had seen better days, the sounds didn't seem entirely unusual. But soon, the noises became more persistent. In the dead of night, when everything else was still, I could hear faint scratching sounds coming from the ventilation system. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct enough to pull me from sleep. The sound would begin like a light tapping, almost like a mouse scurrying around, and then, as I drifted back to sleep, it would get louder. By the second night, I started to wonder if there was something, or someone, lurking behind the walls of my apartment. I checked the vents, thinking there might be a blockage or something caught in them, but there was nothing, just the usual buildup of dust. I even called the maintenance guy to inspect the system. He told me it was probably nothing to worry about, just an old building with worn pipes. I tried to ignore it after that. Maybe it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But the noises didn't stop. They just got weirder. The scratching turned into faint, rhythmic tapping, almost like someone was trying to get my attention. And that's when I started to get a little paranoid. It happened late one evening, just as I was about to fall asleep. I had been lying in bed for a while, eyes closed, half drifting between wakefulness and sleep. That's when I first heard it, a soft whisper, almost like a sigh, coming from the vent. I froze. At first, I thought it was just a part of the building's usual noises, something I had convinced myself was normal. But then the whisper grew louder, clearer. It was unmistakable. The voice, it called my name. "Ethan," it said. I shot up in bed, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice was soft, yet it felt familiar. But there was no one in the apartment with me. I got up, my feet heavy against the floor, and approached the vent. "Ethan," the voice repeated, almost impatiently this time. I stared at the vent for a long moment, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was it the wind? A draft? Something mechanical? But the more I listened, the more it felt like it was directed at me. Not just a random noise, but a conscious sound, a deliberate attempt to get my attention. I wasn't sure what to do. I checked the vent again, inspecting the walls around it, convinced there must be someone, on the other side. But there was nothing, just the cold metal and dust. I lay back down, trying to shake off the unease creeping over me. I told myself I was imagining things. It was just the wind, or some trick of the apartment's old ventilation system. But as I closed my eyes, the voice came again, softer this time, but still clear. "Ethan." That was it. The voice knew my name, and that thought made my blood run cold. The voice didn't stop. It kept coming, every night, growing clearer, as though it was getting closer, somehow. At first, it just said my name over and over again. But then, something changed. The voice began saying things it shouldn't have known. One night, as I was trying to ignore it, I heard the voice again. "Ethan," it whispered softly. "I know about Sarah." My heart stopped. Sarah was my sister. There was no way the voice could know about her. I hadn't even mentioned her to anyone in weeks. I stood frozen in place, my mind racing. How could it know? The voice didn't wait for me to react. It continued. "You miss her, don't you? You've been thinking about her a lot lately. You wonder what she's up to, if she's happy." The voice knew things I hadn't spoken aloud, things I hadn't even realized I was thinking. A strange coldness spread through my veins. My pulse quickened, and I couldn't move. The voice seemed to be inside my mind, reading my thoughts, my deepest fears. "Ethan, you're afraid, aren't you?" it continued. "You've always been afraid of being alone. You hide it, but I know. I can hear it." I stumbled backward, my head spinning. The voice knew things about me, things no one could know. It wasn't just creepy, it was violating. I felt like it was watching me, hearing everything I did, every little thought I had. I walked over to the vent, my hands trembling as I tried to remove the cover. But the vent was empty, nothing inside. It was just the usual dust and dirt. I ran my fingers along the metal, trying to find anything, any explanation. But there was nothing, just an eerie silence now. The voice had stopped. I left the vent and sat on the floor, shaking. My mind was racing. It wasn't just random noise anymore. This was personal. The voice knew me, and worse, it was using that knowledge to creep me out, to make me feel like I was losing control of my own mind. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew it wasn't. The days blurred together after that night. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself it was all just a figment of my imagination. But deep down, I couldn't ignore what had happened. The voice didn't just know my name, it knew things about me, things that no one should have known. It was like it had access to the deepest corners of my life, my thoughts, my fears. Every night, the voice came back. Sometimes it would whisper my name, other times it would speak in riddles, as though it were taunting me, testing how far it could go before I cracked. It spoke of things I had never told anyone. The time I'd lost my job and pretended to be okay. The secret I'd kept from my best friend about the argument we had months ago. The way I'd been feeling lately. Lost, hopeless, disconnected. But it didn't stop there. One night, I heard it say something that made my blood run cold. "Ethan," it murmured, "you think you can escape, but I know where you go. I know everything." I froze in place, my body suddenly paralyzed with fear. The voice didn't just know my past. It knew where I was, right here, in this apartment. It knew my every move, my every decision. I grabbed my phone, intending to call someone, anyone. But before I could even unlock it, the voice interrupted. "Don't bother calling for help. They won't hear you. They won't believe you. I'm already inside." A cold shiver ran down my spine. It was as if the voice was mocking me, making me feel utterly powerless. I tried to rationalize it. Was it just a prank? Was someone in the building messing with me? I searched the apartment, checked the windows, and even called my landlord to ask about the vents, but everything seemed normal. No one else had heard anything strange. No one else knew what I was going through. But I knew the truth. The voice wasn't just coming from the vent anymore. It was everywhere. It was in the walls, in the air, in my head. I could feel it watching me even when I wasn't near the vent. That's when the voice spoke again. "I know what you're thinking, Ethan. You're trying to figure out who I am. You think you can stop me, don't you? But it's too late. I've already won." I felt the panic rise inside me. My breaths quickened, and I stumbled backward, my hands shaking. I didn't know what to do anymore. I wanted to run, to leave, to escape this apartment that was no longer my own. But I couldn't. The walls felt like they were closing in, the air thick with the presence of whatever this thing was. Suddenly, the voice wasn't just in the vent. It was inside my mind. "You're not alone, Ethan. I've always been with you." And with those words, I realized something far more terrifying. The voice wasn't just something outside of me. It was inside, deep within my own thoughts. It knew me better than I knew myself. I couldn't take it anymore. The voice had been with me for so long now, whispering, taunting, and calling my name, that I could no longer distinguish where my thoughts ended and the voice began. It had become a part of me, an inescapable presence in my mind. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was constantly on edge, feeling its eyes on me, always watching. I knew something had to change. The longer I ignored it, the more it seemed to know about me. And the more it knew, the more powerful it became. I couldn't run from it. It was inside me now, embedded in my thoughts. But what was it? Who, or what, was behind this voice? What did it want from me? I spent days searching, digging into the history of the apartment, hoping to find any clue that might explain what was happening. I asked around, spoke to the neighbors, and even called the building's previous tenants. But no one knew anything unusual about the place. The landlord had no answers. The apartment complex had been built decades ago, but it wasn't anything particularly old or suspicious. There were no records of anyone having died here, no tragic past, no paranormal incidents. But that didn't stop the voice. It kept getting louder, more insistent, until one night it spoke with a clarity I had never heard before. "Ethan," it said, its tone dark and final. "I am the one who was forgotten, and you are the one who will remember me." I stood frozen in my kitchen, my hands gripping the counter, my pulse racing. "What do you mean?" I whispered, almost to myself. The voice didn't respond at first, but then it whispered my name again. Only this time, it felt different. It was colder, like it was mocking me. "You've been hearing me for so long," it said, "because you don't want to remember. You've buried it all, deep down inside, where no one can find it. But you'll have to face it eventually. You'll have to face me." I couldn't breathe. My head spun. What was it talking about? What did I bury? I had no idea, but it felt like I was on the brink of a truth I wasn't ready to hear. The voice continued, now filled with a malicious satisfaction. "I was the one who lived here before you. I was the one who died here. I am the one who was erased from the world. And now I am the one who speaks through the vents, the one who calls to you." I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. The apartment felt smaller, colder, as if the walls themselves were closing in around me. A memory, long repressed, flashed in my mind. An accident. A life lost. A name I had tried to forget. "Who are you?" I choked out, my voice trembling with the weight of realization. The voice paused for a moment before it finally answered, and when it did, it was the most chilling thing I had ever heard. "I was the tenant before you. I was the one who died here. I was your brother." My knees buckled beneath me, and I collapsed onto the floor. My head was spinning. My breath was shallow, ragged. I had no brother. I had never had a brother. Or at least, that's what I had always believed. But the voice was too familiar. It knew too much about me. It knew things no one could know. It knew me. It was me. The truth crashed down on me, as heavy and suffocating as the air in the apartment. Somehow, I had pushed the memory of my brother's death so far down that I had forgotten it entirely. A tragic accident that no one ever spoke of. And now, the voice, the spirit of the brother I never knew I had, was trying to make me remember, trying to make me see what I had done. The walls seemed to pulse, the voice becoming louder and louder, as if it was trying to break free from the confines of the apartment, trying to pull me back into the past. "I am the one who was forgotten," it said again, its tone a mixture of sorrow and anger. "But you won't forget me now. You'll remember me forever." And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the voice stopped. The apartment was silent. I sat there, in the darkness, shaking. My mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments of the past. But nothing would make sense. I could no longer trust my own memories, my own thoughts. The voice had taken that from me. I had lost my grip on reality, and now I would never be able to escape.